Welcome, anointed ones. When God elevates you in front of the same people who tried to bury you, it's not just a comeback, it's a divine verdict. Case dismissed. Heaven ruled in your favor. You didn't just prove them wrong, you shattered their illusions in public. The group chats, the lies passed around like cheap perfume, the fake stories, they all ran headfirst into God's timing. And now, the same ones who once said you'd be nothing are sitting in silence, watching you become everything they prayed they could be. Joseph knows this feeling. Betrayed by blood and sold out, yet years later, the same brothers bowed before him. Genesis 50:20. That's what your life looks like now, louder than their denial. Think of the seed, hidden, silent, underestimated, until it rises and no one can ignore it. That's you, chosen one. You were never buried, you were planted. This isn't revenge, this is revelation. So comment 777 if you know what it feels like to be written off too early, only to rise by grace. And to those of you sowing into this space through super thanks, I see you, I honor you. Your giving echoes in eternity. May God multiply it back to you beyond what you imagined. Now buckle in, because we're about to uncover why they're choking on every word they said about you, and why your story is being read out loud like it's scripture. Let's go deeper. God's chosen ones, you got them eating their words. Now the whole city sides with you. They weaponized your reputation not because you were guilty, but because your presence reminded them of everything they had buried. Why did they twist your name so violently? Because your reality was too radiant to deny. It wasn't your words that made them uncomfortable, it was your walk. The way you carried light without announcing it. The way storms hit, yet your foundation never shook. Like Job, stripped of comfort but not of character. You didn't curse God or crumble, you remained. Isn't it strange how they never had real evidence, yet the accusations multiplied? When they couldn't touch your integrity, they reached for your image. When they couldn't destroy the fruit, they tried poisoning the roots. They whispered falsehoods in hidden rooms, hoping if enough shadows gathered, they could create a new version of you, one molded in their own insecurity. But here's what they didn't anticipate. The audience was wider than they thought. People weren't just hearing what was said, they were discerning who was speaking and why. They noticed the patterns. Why did this person keep talking about you? Why did they seem more invested in tearing you down than building anything themselves? Was it jealousy? Was it guilt? Remember Joseph? Betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, his reputation demolished before his purpose even had a chance to bloom. But Genesis 50:20 says, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." The very lies they told about you became the soil in which your calling grew. I'll tell you about Elise. She was a school counselor in a small town, quiet, honest, always kind. One year, a colleague with influence began to spread rumors, accused her of favoritism, said she was manipulative. No proof, just whispers. She didn't defend herself, she just kept showing up. Months later, the accuser was caught falsifying student records. And Elise? She was promoted. You see, when you walk in truth, time becomes your ally, and silence becomes your armor. What did you do? You didn't rage. You didn't try to match their chaos. You just kept building, like Nehemiah on the wall, hammer in one hand, purpose in the other, refusing to come down and explain yourself to those throwing verbal stones. Nehemiah 6:3 declares, "I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down." They watched you, hoping you'd trip, praying you'd break. But the opposite happened. You glowed, you rose, and the contrast exposed them. Their words echoed back like boomerangs, wounding their own credibility. And now, the same mouths that spoke against you are silent, or worse, confused. Because your elevation wasn't loud, it was sacred. You didn't campaign for vindication, you embodied it. You didn't chase applause, you became the evidence. It's uncomfortable for them now, isn't it? Because it's not just about your truth being seen, it's about their motives being revealed. And the worst part, you never sought revenge. You healed, you grew, you prospered, you stepped into spaces they said you didn't deserve and made them holy. You are God's chosen, and like the mighty oak that stands firm despite the fiercest winds, your roots run deep into the earth, unseen but unbreakable. Can you feel how the air has changed? Those who once doubted you now follow you, but not from alignment, from confusion, from guilt, from awe, and they look lost because they realize now the version of you they feared was only the beginning. The real you, refined, anointed, unbothered, is far more than they could ever silence. Isaiah 54:17 stands eternal. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. The light you carry didn't need defense. It simply needed time. And time has revealed that while they tried to bury you, they didn't know you were a seed. Consider Oprah Winfrey, a woman who faced countless rejections and character attacks early in her career, accused unfairly, doubted relentlessly. Yet she chose to rise, to heal, and to elevate herself beyond the noise. Her story reminds us that resilience coupled with integrity turns trials into testimony. Or think about Marcus, a community leader I once met, humble, quiet, wrongly accused by jealous peers. He didn't engage in gossip or retaliation. Instead, he devoted himself to service and kindness. Today, he is beloved, respected, and those who doubted him are left grappling with their own bitterness. What is it about truth and time that makes them the most powerful allies? Why does your silence unsettle those desperate for chaos? Why does your steady presence threaten those who thrive on drama? People remember, heaven remembers, and most importantly, you remember, not to hate, but to testify. Let them look lost. You were never meant to be understood by those who refused to see the oil on your head. They mocked what they did not understand because fear gripped their hearts. The fear of losing control over a truth they could neither grasp nor govern. Have you ever felt the sting of laughter that is not born from joy, but from discomfort? Why is it that when something shines too brightly, those around it instinctively try to dim the light with ridicule? They labeled you too much, too deep, or too different, as if your very existence was a challenge to their fragile sense of normalcy. But isn't it curious? What is it in you that unsettles them so? Is it because you refuse to follow their script? Because you do not seek permission to be your fullest self? Because your spirit stands free, unshackled by their expectations? You didn't ask for their approval to shine. You didn't beg for belonging in their crowd. That unyielding stance frightened them because, unlike you, most people find safety in numbers. But you, like the prophet Jeremiah, who declared God's word alone in the midst of a hostile world, Jeremiah 1:19, stood alone and unafraid. How long can one stand isolated before the world begins to notice? What does it mean to be truly authentic when surrounded by masks and pretense? They misunderstood your silence, thinking it was weakness. Yet your quiet was a fortress, your detachment a shield. You were observing, cataloging every move, every word, every shadow of intent, much like the patient owl that watches silently in the night, understanding more than it reveals. What wisdom does silence hold that noise cannot compete with? And why does the stillness of your resolve shake them so deeply? Their laughter faded as your vision began to take shape. The room, once filled with scoffs and sneers, now bristles with an uneasy silence. Those who once talked over you now find their voices faltering, because they see what you always knew. Power doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be real. Just as the mighty river carves canyons not by rushing, but by steady persistence, your growth cannot be ignored. They never truly hated you. They feared the freedom you embodied. Your refusal to shrink, to contort yourself to their molds, exposed the emptiness of their own performances. Have you ever wondered how it feels to watch others mimic a dance you invented? To see them attempt a rhythm they can never quite master? The late Maya Angelou, a voice of undeniable truth and courage, once said, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated." How much more powerful is the spirit that rises unbroken while the crowd clings to fragile facades? Think about Fred Rogers, the humble TV host known as Mr. Rogers. Despite facing criticism and misunderstanding for his gentle, unassuming approach, he quietly built a legacy of kindness and healing over decades. His calm presence and consistent message of love reached millions, transforming lives without flashy drama. Like Fred, your quiet strength speaks volumes over time. How does steady kindness become a revolutionary force in a noisy world? Let me share a story about Eleanor, a quiet school librarian who for years was mocked for her love of poetry and solitude. Too serious, they said, too different. But Eleanor's world was rich with the whispered wisdom of pages, and in her silence, she nurtured a voice that would one day inspire a whole community. When her poetry was finally published, those who once scoffed were left speechless. What might your own Eleanor moment look like? The moment when the world finally hears your truth? Isaiah reminds us, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Isaiah 40:31. Like the eagle, you rise alone and majestic, unshaken by the storms below. Why cling to the safety of the crowd when you were born to soar? Consider the resilient mangrove tree, standing firm at the edge of the sea, roots tangled in both water and earth, neither fully one nor the other, thriving where few plants dare. You too thrive in spaces others fear to enter. Your existence defies easy categorization, and therein lies your power. Your energy, the same one once mocked, is now the source of respect and admiration. It is your signature, impossible to replicate, forged through solitude and perseverance. You were never the problem. You were the pioneer, the early flame before the dawn. Now, the dawn has come, and those who mocked are left in the shadows, realizing too late that their laughter was a wasted echo against your rising light. What does your freedom say to those still trapped by fear? How will their disbelief shape their own path? These questions linger, unanswered, as your story continues to unfold, bold, authentic, and unstoppable. You didn't need revenge. You let results humiliate them. You didn't waste your time trying to clap back. You didn't throw dirt back at them. You let the results humiliate them, and that's what hit the hardest. Have you ever wondered why the loudest noise in the world is sometimes the sound of silence? Like the stillness before a storm, it holds a tension that no words can capture. In the same way, your quiet dignity spoke volumes they couldn't drown out. Why do you think it's so difficult for people to face a truth they cannot dispute? Could it be because the truth doesn't just challenge their words, it challenges their very identity? Think about Malala Yousafzai, the young activist who survived an assassination attempt simply for standing firm in her beliefs about education and equality. She didn't respond with hatred or revenge, but with peaceful advocacy and resilience that shook the world. What made Malala's power so undeniable? Was it her words, or was it the results of her courage and unwavering faith? But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Matthew 5:44. Malala lived this, letting her life testify beyond what words could say. They expected you to fold under pressure. They expected you to react emotionally, to spiral, to beg people to see your side. But you didn't move like that. While they were running their mouths, you were running your business. While they were gossiping, you were building. Every insult they threw was just fuel for your next move. You let them talk, and then you let your life speak louder. As it is written, though the wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. Psalm 37:12-13. They never saw the power in silence because they assumed silence meant defeat. But silence is not emptiness. It's the space where preparation happens, where the seed germinates unseen beneath the soil before it bursts into bloom. Can you see how silence can be a fortress rather than a prison? How often have you mistaken quiet patience for weakness, when in reality it's the calm before an unstoppable breakthrough? Let me tell you about Javier, a small-town craftsman who was constantly belittled for his old-fashioned methods and quiet nature. People laughed, saying he'd never compete with modern factories. But Javier kept perfecting his craft in silence. Years later, his handmade work was sought after worldwide, cherished for its authenticity and quality. How many victories are won by those who quietly persist? Unnoticed at first, but unstoppable in the end. They didn't realize you were using that time to master your craft, to strengthen your mind, and to sharpen your vision. You weren't sitting still. You were sitting in purpose, like the mighty baobab tree, which stands tall in the harshest environments, storing water deep in its trunk to survive droughts and flourish for centuries. Your growth was both gradual and unstoppable. Have you noticed how some trees survive droughts not by fighting the dryness, but by adapting their roots deeper into the earth? So did you adapt your spirit to thrive despite the harsh seasons you faced? And when you started elevating, it wasn't small, it wasn't quiet, it was undeniable. The glow-up wasn't cosmetic, it was rooted in real healing, real strategy, and real growth. True transformation is never surface level. It changes the core of who you are from the inside out. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. 2 Corinthians 4:16. Remember Vera Wang, who started her fashion career relatively late after facing setbacks in the figure skating world and as a journalist. Instead of giving up, she channeled her passion into design, becoming one of the most renowned bridal gown designers globally. How might your setbacks be the quiet groundwork for a stunning breakthrough? That's what's embarrassing for them now, because the same people who doubted you are watching you walk through the very doors they swore would never open for you. And worse, you didn't step on them to get there. You didn't have to destroy them. They destroyed themselves by betting against someone who never needed to play dirty. Have you ever seen how the eagle doesn't chase the crow? It simply soars higher, and the crow's noise fades beneath the sky. Now, your peace is loud, your presence is intimidating, and they know it. They see it in the way people listen when you speak. They feel it in the way you move without apology. They hear it in the way your name is mentioned in rooms they can't get into, and you never had to lift a finger to get revenge. Your elevation became the response. Your success made the noise. Your growth made the case. And now they look ridiculous, not just for what they said, but for how confidently they said it. Because in the end, you let your life prove every lie wrong. And you did it with class, with power, and without needing to lower yourself to their level. That's what truly crushed them. As Proverbs reminds us, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. You chose the gentle power of perseverance, and that choice echoed louder than any shout. Consider the strength of the elephant, known for its wisdom and calm in the face of chaos, never charging blindly, but moving steadily and with purpose through storms. What can the elephant teach us about resilience in the face of mockery and doubt? How often does nature quietly remind us of the power in steady endurance? How much more powerful is the victory earned in silence than the one screamed in anger? How much deeper is the respect earned through integrity than the one gained through conflict? What would it mean to walk so fully and authentically that your very existence becomes a living rebuke to those who doubted you? The world is watching, and your rise, quiet but undeniable, is the most powerful statement you could ever make. The same people who once rolled their eyes when you spoke, who smirked at your convictions, dismissed your passion, and labeled your perspective as too much, are now quoting you in rooms you weren't even allowed to enter. Isn't it strange how silence becomes golden once it's no longer yours? Every idea you brought to the table, they once laughed off as radical, spiritual, or unrealistic. But was it really your vision that was too much? Or was it simply too far beyond the limits of their imagination? Have you ever wondered why the truth so often makes others uncomfortable? Your insight made them uncomfortable, not because it was flawed, but because it illuminated the shallow waters they had learned to call deep. And so, instead of leaning in with curiosity, they turned their faces away. Instead of asking questions, they filled the space with gossip. You weren't just misunderstood, you were strategically silenced. Why? Because you weren't playing their game, and you couldn't be manipulated into their rules. You didn't need a seat at their table. You were carving one from raw wood and sacred time. How often do we confuse silence with defeat when it might actually be the quiet before a great awakening? Have you ever watched how a bamboo grows? For years it breaks no ground above the soil, and yet underneath it's multiplying its root system, reaching deeper, spreading wider, preparing for a moment only God can orchestrate. Then, suddenly, overnight, it rises. Sometimes 3 feet in 24 hours. That was you, hidden but not stagnant, silent but not absent. They confused your hiddenness for defeat, but you were becoming unshakable. Consider the story of Maria, a single mother working 2 jobs while raising her children in a tough neighborhood. For years, her ideas about community change and empowerment were dismissed by those around her. Too idealistic, too demanding, too different. Neighbors whispered that she was dreaming too big, that her efforts would never amount to anything. Yet, quietly, Maria kept organizing small neighborhood cleanups, tutoring children after school, and advocating for better local services. She wasn't in the spotlight, and most didn't notice. But those seeds she planted took root in hearts and minds, creating a ripple effect that eventually transformed her community's spirit. Was she any different from the great leaders history praises? In the quiet grind of everyday life, her persistence became a living testament to the truth in Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. What small actions are you quietly taking that will one day change the world around you? What happens when those who rejected the voice are now clinging to the echo? Look at the elephant, majestic, slow-moving, seemingly gentle, but it never forgets. Not out of bitterness, but out of divine intelligence. Like you, it carries memory without vengeance. Your silence wasn't passivity, it was divine positioning. You too soared like an eagle. While they gossiped on the ground, you were rising into thinner air where noise cannot follow. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. They thought you were disappearing, when in reality you were ascending to a height they were never created to reach. They mocked your roots, not realizing you are a sequoia, growing slowly, deeply, and intentionally. A sequoia isn't flashy in its early years, but over time it becomes impossible to ignore. They will be called a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. Isaiah 61:3. That's you. God never plants anything he doesn't intend to harvest. And now, your words, yes, those very words they dismissed, are being whispered with reverence in rooms they never wanted you to enter. They're quoting you without attribution, stealing your fire, because suddenly your light is useful. They echo your philosophies, imitate your posture, parrot your boldness, but the oil that anoints can't be duplicated. Where were they when your voice was trembling from being mocked? When your passion was called rebellion? When your purity was labeled pride? Have you noticed how easily people adopt what they once rejected? And what does that say about the nature of influence and truth? They didn't realize your influence was like a stream under rock, quiet, unseen, persistent. Eventually, it cracks open the stone. Is not my word like fire, declares the Lord, and like a hammer that breaks a rock in pieces? Jeremiah 23:29. What they tried to contain has now broken through. Think of J.K. Rowling, who faced repeated rejection and ridicule before her Harry Potter books became a global phenomenon. Those same critics who doubted her vision are now echoing her magical world, yet forgetting the struggle behind the magic. Or think closer of the school janitor who, for decades, quietly encouraged and mentored generations of children who never saw the spotlight. Years later, those children stand on stages and say, "He changed my life." The world might overlook your impact, but eternity never forgets a seed sown in truth. Who in your life might be that quiet hero, unseen but powerful? How many times have you seen this play out? They disregard the caterpillar, not knowing it's writing its wings in silence. They trample dandelions until they realize it feeds the bees. They scorn the wind until it turns into a storm. You were mocked in your process, but now that the fruit has ripened, they want to claim the harvest. Isn't that something? You don't need to clap back. The fact that your voice now lives in places your body was once denied is divine vindication. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118, verse 22. Now they're repeating your words like they discovered them, but your silence is louder than their performance, and your presence, real, raw, refined, can't be faked. Because truth doesn't expire, authenticity doesn't rot, and purpose doesn't need permission. The blueprint they dismissed is now the design they're chasing. They're draped in garments sewn from the cloth you were ridiculed for wearing. Let them quote you. Let them imitate you. Let them pretend they never saw you. It doesn't matter. Heaven knows. The earth knows. The fruit knows. And even the rooms they tried to keep you out of now echo with your sound. That's not revenge. That's legacy. That's the glory of one who waited on God and let his justice be poetic. They were never opposed to you. They were addicted to dimming what they knew was light. They were never really against you, not in the way they pretended. The truth is, they saw your light before you fully knew what it was. They saw something real, raw, and untouchable radiating from you. And instead of being inspired, they got triggered because your presence didn't just light up the room. It highlighted everything fake in it. You didn't come in loud, but your energy spoke volumes. You weren't trying to be better than anyone, but your truth, your authenticity, your refusal to play small, that irritated them. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting the reflection you brought out in them. You made them uncomfortable, not because you were wrong, but because you were right in ways they couldn't deny. You saw through the masks, the games, the manipulations. You carried a clarity that pierced through their illusions, and instead of facing their own emptiness, they decided to attack the one person who wouldn't pretend. They couldn't name what it was, so they tried to label you as the problem. Too intense, too sensitive, too direct, too different. But you weren't the issue. Their unhealed selves were. You reminded them of everything they hadn't dealt with, everything they buried, everything they were faking just to survive. And so they made it their mission to dim you, not because you were too bright, but because they refused to evolve. Think of James, a humble carpenter in a small town who spent years quietly building homes and fixing broken furniture. No one applauded his work. No one wrote stories about him. But every piece he touched carried his dedication and honesty. Over time, families thrived in the houses he built, and children grew up with a safe place to call home. James never sought glory, but his impact was undeniable. When storms came and homes needed repair, everyone turned to him. Not because he shouted the loudest, but because his craftsmanship was real and trustworthy. How often do we miss the quiet legacies built by people like James? How often do we confuse noise for value? Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Luke 16:10. His light was steady, unwavering, and it revealed the true power of humble faith. Or remember Maya Angelou, whose voice rose above the noise of rejection and pain to become a beacon of courage and truth. Her poetry, her memoirs, and her spirit challenged generations to see beyond prejudice and pain to the unbreakable human soul. When she said, "I rise," she wasn't just speaking of personal triumph. She was proclaiming the power of resilience in the face of a world that tried to silence her. Haven't you ever felt that same struggle, that same call to rise, even when the weight of judgment pressed down? The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. Maya's light shone because she embraced her scars and made them sacred. But now that time has passed and truth has done what it always does, rise. You're being validated. Your words, your wisdom, your spirit had all aged well, and now they're being exposed. Not because you fought back, but because your life did. The masks they wore are slipping. The people they manipulated are waking up. And everything they tried to pin on you is circling back on them. They never hated you. They feared your power, your peace, your alignment. And instead of doing the work to rise with you, they tried to drag you down. Now they're stuck watching you thrive, fully aware that the light they tried to dim was the very thing they needed to heal. Look at the octopus, an intelligent creature that changes color and shape to survive. Yet beneath that shifting surface lies a wisdom born from adaptability and resilience. You too learn to bend without breaking, to transform without losing your core. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. Their attempts to shadow you only made your glow more striking. Their resistance was never truly about you. It was about their fear of being left behind. And what about the countless stories of stars like Beyoncé, whose brilliance forced many to confront their own insecurities? Her light wasn't just talent, it was a challenge to others to step into their own power. Like you, she refused to dim herself for the comfort of others. She shone unapologetically, and the world had to adjust. Have you ever noticed how true light always demands a response? Are they ready to face what you reflect? Let them dim what they cannot embrace. Let them wrestle with their shadows. Your destiny was never to fade away. It was to illuminate, to awaken, and to inspire. And as your light grows, so does the hope that even those lost in the dark might one day find their way. You were the test, and they failed publicly. But it wasn't just a random moment in their lives. It was sacred, an assignment, a divine checkpoint in time. You were the exam they didn't even know they were taking, and yet heaven watched every answer. Did they respond with jealousy or with joy, with sarcasm or sincerity? When your light entered the room, did they lean in to understand it, or did they turn away to hide from it? You didn't come demanding praise. You arrived with purpose, wrapped in humility. But that was the test. Could they recognize what was pure without the need for performance? Could they discern oil even when it came in a vessel that didn't match their expectations? You showed up with light, clarity, presence, and unknowingly you exposed everything fake around you. The way they treated you had nothing to do with your behavior. It was all about their character, because your very presence peeled back their pretenses. You didn't have to say much. Your life was the loudest truth in the room. Your peace, it rattled their chaos. Your purpose, it made their mediocrity ache. Your consistency, it outlasted their noise. Like the lynx moving silently through a snow-covered forest, your stillness disturbed them more than shouting ever could. They didn't understand why just your being made them feel exposed. But the truth is, your presence was prophetic. It pulled masks off without asking permission. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. And the light was you. They failed the test not because they didn't know you, but because they didn't know themselves. You were the mirror, and when they looked into you, they saw the unhealed, the hidden, the hypocrisy, and instead of doing the work, they chose to destroy the mirror. Have you noticed? They didn't just distance themselves, they gossiped. They didn't just ignore you, they mocked you in group chats. They didn't just move on, they made you a topic, an object, a weapon. They dropped your name in conversations like it was an accessory, something they could use for status or scorn. But what they didn't realize was, the same people they whispered to, they're now watching. The same audience they entertained with lies, that audience now sees truth blooming through your life. How does it feel to be vindicated by God and not your own voice? How does it feel to be proof that silence is not weakness but wisdom? How does it feel to be the walking answer to the question they never asked? What happens when someone refuses to break? Your glow-up is not petty, it's prophetic. Think of Brendan Fraser, discarded, blacklisted, mocked, and dismissed. But he didn't crumble. He healed. And when he returned, the very industry that tried to erase him had to applaud. His vindication wasn't crafted in revenge. It was sculpted by grace. Or think of Aria, a quiet librarian in a small town. She always offered kindness, always remembered birthdays, always gave her best, even when she was overlooked. Years later, when a tragic fire struck the town, it was Aria who had the emergency plans, the compassion, the leadership no one expected. Suddenly, the woman they once called invisible was the one everyone turned to. Her reward? It wasn't applause, it was impact. And the same people who ignored her presence now speak her name with reverence. And what about you? They thought they failed you, but no, they failed themselves, and not in secret, because you weren't there to be accepted. You were sent to reveal. And what was revealed was not your flaws, but their fractures. Not your desperation, but their disconnection. Not your lack, but their lack of integrity. Sow righteousness for yourselves. Reap the fruit of unfailing love. Hosea 10:12. There is no backpedaling now. No explanation can erase the smirks, the passive-aggressive posts, the betrayal spoken as concern. Their answer sheets have been turned in, and the results are public. The judgment isn't yours to give. Reality already did that. And as you walk into new seasons, more aligned, more whole, more radiant, know this: they don't regret losing you. They regret being seen for who they truly were, when your light exposed their shadow. But it's too late. The test is over, and heaven has already stamped the papers. Pass or fail. You weren't just a chapter in their life. You were the question that revealed their answer. And the whole city watched. They didn't just lose you. What they lost was far more costly than they'll ever be able to admit. They lost access to the prophetic future you represented. When you walked away, it wasn't just a goodbye, it was a holy severing. A divine act, both visible and invisible, that shut a door not only in the natural, but in the spirit. They thought they were rejecting a person, but they were rejecting a portal, and the saddest part, they had no idea. This makes you wonder, how many times do people cry out to God for breakthrough, only to reject the form it arrives in? How often do they beg for divine intervention, then turn their backs because it comes wrapped in humanity? You weren't just someone passing through. You were a divine interruption, a sacred assignment, a living answer to silent prayers, sent not only to shift your own life, but to unlock purpose in theirs as well. But because it came wearing your skin, your vulnerability, your boundaries, your silent storms, they missed it. They missed the voice of God, not because he didn't speak, but because they didn't like the vessel he chose. Just like in Mark 6, when Jesus returned to his hometown and they dismissed him, not because he wasn't divine, but because he looked too familiar. "Isn't this the carpenter's son?" they scoffed, and their unbelief sealed their own lack. He could do no mighty work there. It wasn't power he lacked, it was honor. And that's exactly what happened to you. Because of this, they dishonored your purpose. They disrespected your presence. They mishandled something holy because it didn't look how they expected. They treated prophetic access like it was common currency. And now the well is dry. You weren't loud about what you carried, but you carried it nonetheless. Your intercession, your discernment, your protection, your foresight. You covered them in silence while they uncovered you in gossip. This raises a question. How often do people bite the hand that shields them? They didn't just hurt you, they robbed themselves, because you were the key to a level they didn't even know they were standing next to. And God will never allow the sacred to be managed by the mocking. They thought your exit was their victory, but in heaven's courtroom it was their loss. They had access to the mantle and chose mockery, access to favor and chose envy, access to oil and chose to spill it. Now the lamp has gone out, and they walk in a darkness of their own making. What's worse, they're locked out not by your will but by divine order, because the favor that followed you wasn't earned. It was entrusted, and they proved they could not be trusted. Isn't it haunting to look back and realize the one you rejected was the one sent to help deliver you? That the person you dismissed held the key to the door you're now banging on in desperation. And if God sent them again today, would you even recognize them, or would your pride blind you once more? Consider Robert Downey Jr., a talented actor whose career spiraled downward due to personal struggles and public scrutiny. For years, many wrote him off, believing his fall was final. But through perseverance and inner transformation, he quietly rebuilt himself away from the spotlight. When he returned, it wasn't with noise or spectacle. It was with grace and undeniable brilliance. The same industry that doubted him watched in awe as he rose to become one of the most beloved and highest paid actors in Hollywood. But it's not just the famous. There's Angela, a quiet school janitor in a small town. No one saw her as more than the woman who mopped floors, but she prayed over every classroom, blessed every hallway, spoke life over every troubled child. When she retired, everything changed. Violence rose, teachers quit, test scores dropped. No one realized it had been her quiet covering that held the chaos back. She wasn't just cleaning the building, she was consecrating it. And if you look to nature, you'll see this same mystery. The tide pool, for instance, small, still, often overlooked. Yet it houses entire ecosystems, hidden miracles of life and balance. One careless touch, one footstep in ignorance, can destroy what took years to sustain. How many tide pools, how many sacred carriers like you have been dismissed because they didn't come with thunder? That's how the divine often moves. Quiet, holy, not to be provoked. And now as they watch you rise, not bitter, not loud, but radiant, They're coming to terms with the reality that what they lost was not replaceable. This wasn't just a connection, it was a once-in-a-lifetime alignment. And when heaven closes a door, it doesn't just lock, it vanishes. They can mimic your smile, steal your phrases, imitate your style, but they cannot fake your oil. They cannot replicate your access, because prophetic doors don't open twice. You weren't sent to be celebrated. You were sent to reveal, to test the hearts, to expose the pride, to offer a new future and witness who was ready. And now the judgment has already arrived, not by your lips, but through the reality they're forced to face. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them stare through gates they can no longer enter. Let them feel the weight of what they mishandled, because the table has been set, and the seats already filled, not by the loud, not by the popular, but by the faithful, the discerning, the humble. And no, the divine doesn't wait forever. When heaven moves on, it moves in fullness. And when God closes a door, it doesn't just lock, it disappears. Your anointing was always louder than their accusations. They just didn't know people were listening. They thought if they said it loud enough, often enough, and to enough people, it would become the truth. They were banking on gossip to destroy you, confident that their version of your identity would be the one that stuck. But what they failed to realize was that your anointing had already spoken long before they ever opened their mouths, and real ones were listening, not to the drama, not to the mess, but to something much deeper, to the quiet consistency, to the way you stayed grounded while they were busy performing, loud and frantic. Isn't it telling that people who are truly rooted don't need to explain themselves to be understood? They thought they were painting a masterpiece of your downfall, but the irony, the crowd wasn't just watching you, they were studying them. People saw who threw the first stone, who couldn't keep your name out of their mouth. And slowly, without a word from you, people started doing the math. Your silence didn't make you look guilty, it made you look secure. Your peace became the biggest question mark hanging over every lie they told. Because how could someone that calm, that focused, that unmoved by chaos, possibly be what they claimed you were? You didn't fight back with pettiness. You didn't compete for attention. You let your life preach. And that kind of grace doesn't go unnoticed. Even those who didn't know the full story could feel something didn't add up. Is it not written, "By their fruit you will recognize them"? Matthew 7:16. They watched you stay rooted while others unraveled, watched you pour into yourself while others poured poison into the timeline. Like a mountain weathering the storm, you stood still while the wind screamed around you. Storms pass, but what's rooted in truth doesn't move. You didn't react, you outlasted, and now the truth has spoken in a way no rumor ever could. The verdict's in, and it didn't come from a loud defense or a public rebuttal. It came from your track record, your resilience, your peace, your elevation. People realized you were never the one acting out. You were the one carrying something sacred. Look at Keanu Reeves, quiet, private, never one to fight for the spotlight. Yet for years people tried to reduce him to a meme, a whisper, a sad story. But his presence, his humility, and consistency made the noise disappear. Now, he's seen for what he always was: solid, authentic, set apart. Monica, a small-town saleswoman who ran a booth at the Saturday market. Jealousy crept in when her handmade products began to outsell others. Rumors spread, false claims, whispers about her ingredients, but she never argued back. She just kept showing up, kept improving, kept smiling. Now she owns a thriving shop, and those who tried to ruin her, they only highlighted her excellence. And think of Bolo, a dog rescued from the streets, scarred and timid from years of neglect. At first, neighbors were suspicious. He barked at loud voices, flinched at sudden movements. They called him aggressive, untrustworthy. But the family who adopted him saw through the noise. They gave him space, time, and love. And slowly, his true nature emerged. Loyal, gentle, and fiercely protective. In the end, the problem was never the dog. It was the echoes of wounds others refused to see. How often do we judge what's misunderstood instead of asking what it's been through? The ones who tried to bury you, they exposed themselves. They thought they controlled the narrative, but they didn't know people were paying attention to character, not volume. Because truth doesn't need a mic, it just needs time. You didn't have to scream. Your anointing was always louder than their accusations, and now that the dust has settled, everybody sees who had the oil and who just had opinions. They built a case against you without realizing they were the evidence. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why some people invest so much energy trying to tear someone else down? Every time they open their mouths to speak against you, were they aware that they were unknowingly digging their own graves? Each accusation was a shovel in their own foundation, a step closer to their unraveling. They believed that piling up stories, twisting facts, and spinning lies would shatter your reputation. But what if the real story being told was theirs, written in the cracks of their character, not yours? Their obsession with destroying you wasn't about you at all. It was a loud confession of their own insecurities. Their pettiness unfolded like a poorly directed drama, awkward, transparent, desperate for attention. They tried to script a narrative where you were the villain, but in doing so, they were writing their own confessions in plain sight. How often do we forget that attempts to harm others end up exposing ourselves in the clearest light? Every twisted tale, every exaggerated flaw reflected their own battles with fear, jealousy, and self-doubt. Those watching were not deceived. They saw the pattern. Consider Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. What fruit were they harvesting from their toxic words? Could it ever be anything but bitterness and regret? In trying to paint you as the villain, they instead became the true spectacle of toxicity and weakness. Picture the sun being obscured by storm clouds. The sky may darken for a moment, but the sun never stops burning. Its light always returns, unchanged, undiminished. That's what truth does. It waits in silence until the noise clears. Consider Viola Davis, an actress who faced years of being overlooked and underestimated in an industry quick to judge by skin color and stereotypes. Despite the silence and setbacks, she cultivated her craft and resilience quietly. When she finally rose to stardom, it wasn't just talent on display, but a powerful testament to perseverance and integrity. What does her journey reveal about the unstoppable force of unwavering faith in oneself? And then there's Rosa, a quiet mother of two selling handmade soaps at a local market. A competitor spread rumors that her products were unsafe, trying to push her out. But instead of retaliating, Rosa doubled down on quality, kindness, and transparency. Her customers stayed. They told others. Now her little booth is the busiest on the block. The slander backfired and became her spotlight. The louder they shouted, the more obvious it became that their own house was crumbling. Like a decaying tree covered in lush leaves, they appeared alive from a distance, but inside, rot had already hollowed them out. Their words choked out the very truth they feared to face, about themselves and the divine purpose moving through you. Recall Jesus' words in John 8:32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Their accusations failed to stick because their foundation was built on shifting sand, fear, envy, and insecurity. So why did they spend so much time and energy trying to break you down, when in reality they were only revealing who they truly were? And here lies the deepest irony. The more they shouted their lies, the louder the silence of truth became. In this divine story, their voices echoed their own brokenness, while your story rose, unshaken, radiant, and victorious. The impact went far beyond simply proving them wrong. It disrupted the entire power structure they relied on. This wasn't just a personal victory. It sent shockwaves through the foundations of their control. Rising above the noise and disproving their claims didn't just silence critics. It exposed the fragility of the system they used to maintain power. It's worth pausing to consider just how delicate those foundations really are. Those who once held the keys to influence and respect suddenly appeared vulnerable and cracked, no longer able to claim the authority built on lies and manipulation. Such a powerful story forced many to ask uncomfortable questions. If someone dismissed and marginalized could rise so undeniably, who else might have been overlooked or silenced? How many others were pushed aside because they challenged the status quo? What began as a single spark grew into a collective awakening, challenging the old narratives and false gatekeepers who decided who mattered and who didn't. This shift transcended loyalty or fandom. Entire communities started to rethink what truth really means and who deserves their trust. The layers of prejudice, bias, and manipulation that had gone unnoticed or unchallenged were finally peeled back. Consider Louis Zamperini, an Olympic runner turned World War II airman who survived 47 days adrift at sea and endured brutal captivity as a prisoner of war. His story is one of relentless endurance and unbreakable faith, proving that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can rise undefeated. Like Zamperini, your journey reveals the power of resilience that transcends suffering. How often do we recognize strength born from struggle? The Bible says in Isaiah 61:1, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives." Are you ready to ask yourself how you are called to bring freedom and healing in your own sphere? But liberation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's like the deep journey of the blue whale, gliding through the vast ocean, unseen for miles, yet carrying unmatched strength beneath the surface. It doesn't need to thrash or roar to prove its power. Its presence is felt in the stillness, in the depth, in the silent weight of what it carries. Like the whale, your quiet endurance is not absence, it's majesty in motion. Have you ever wondered if the deepest strength is the one that moves beneath the noise? In everyday life, think about Rosa, a local school teacher in a small town, who in her quiet dedication to her students' futures changed the trajectory of hundreds of lives. She never made headlines, but her legacy is profound. Isn't real power often found in these unseen acts of unwavering commitment? The power structure they built on fear and exclusion began to crumble as people shifted their allegiance. They couldn't hold on to control when the crowd saw through the charade. Your rise became a movement, not just about you, but about reclaiming integrity, fairness, and authenticity in a system that long forgot what those words meant. Now, the city isn't just siding with you because of what you achieved. They're siding with you because you made them rethink everything they thought they knew. Just as the roots of a mountain pine cling tightly to the rocky cliffs, growing in silence through harsh winds and thin soil, your resilience has taken hold where others would have withered. What does your journey reveal about the quiet strength required to thrive in unforgiving places? That kind of impact, that's not just winning, that's rewriting the rules of the game entirely. Just as the mighty lion commands respect without raising its roar, so too does your silent strength resonate louder than any clamor for control. Are we paying enough attention to the quiet forces reshaping our world? They thought they buried you, but you were just deepening your roots. When they thought they had buried you, they didn't realize you were actually planting yourself deeper into the soil of your purpose. Your silence wasn't defeat. It was the calm before the storm. While they celebrated your supposed downfall, you were quietly gathering strength, sharpening your vision, and tuning into a power they couldn't touch or understand. They mistook your absence for weakness, but what they failed to see was that every moment of stillness was a moment of preparation. You weren't hiding from the world. You were hiding in your purpose, becoming unshakable from the inside out. You were building roots so deep that no storm, no gossip, no betrayal could ever uproot you again. Their noise became background static to your focused growth. They thought your silence was a crack, but it was a cocoon, one that was crafting a transformation they weren't equipped to witness. When hardship pushes you into silence, what are you truly cultivating beneath the surface? How deep are your roots growing while others only see the surface? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. This promise reminds us that even when submerged in hardship and silence, we are never truly alone or defeated. When you came back, it wasn't just a return, it was a rebirth. You showed up stronger, wiser, and more aligned than ever. You brought with you a presence that wasn't just about surviving, but thriving. And that's what caught them off guard. They expected the old version, the one they thought they could break, but instead they faced someone untouchable. This comeback wasn't accidental, it was designed. Every setback was a setup for your breakthrough. While they wasted time plotting your downfall, you were busy rewriting your story. They didn't understand that silence is sometimes the loudest statement you can make. It's not about disappearing. It's about re-emerging with a force so powerful that it leaves no doubt about who's truly in control. Have you ever wondered why the quietest people often become the most powerful? What strength are you hiding in your silence that others fail to see? Take Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack at just 13 years old. In the months that followed, she disappeared from the spotlight, not to give up, but to relearn, to rebuild, to rise again. While the world assumed her story was over, she was quietly training herself to return to the waves. Her silence wasn't a retreat, it was the echo of resilience being forged in private. And when she stepped back onto her surfboard, she didn't just ride the ocean, she inspired the world. How many times have we confused stillness with surrender, when it's really preparation for a comeback no one saw coming? Or consider Jane Goodall, the renowned primatologist and conservationist who spent countless years quietly observing chimpanzees in the wild before the world truly recognized the importance of her work. Her patience and silent dedication laid the foundation for a revolutionary understanding of animal behavior and environmental stewardship. What lessons about perseverance and unseen growth can we draw from her story? Harriet Tubman, the iconic abolitionist and conductor of the Underground Railroad, also exemplifies this deep-rooted strength. Despite the dangers and setbacks she faced, Tubman's silent resolve and unwavering courage enabled her to guide hundreds of enslaved people to freedom. Her strength grew not from loud defiance, but from an unshakable commitment to her purpose. What is your purpose that roots you so firmly when storms rage? And on a more personal, relatable level, there are countless everyday heroes. People like Anna, a small business owner in a tight-knit community who faced repeated setbacks, criticism, and even sabotage from competitors. While others gossiped and celebrated her struggles, Anna retreated into a quiet space to learn, adapt, and strengthen her business model. Over time, her persistence and silent resilience transformed her modest shop into a beloved local landmark, proving that sometimes the deepest roots grow in the silence where others only hear defeat. Could your silent resilience be laying the foundation for your future victory? The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. Psalm 28:7. Your strength is not just self-made, it is supported by a higher power that renews you from within. Just like the snow leopard moving silently across the highest, harshest peaks, your strength has been building in stillness, hidden from those who only look for noise and spectacle. Its power isn't in its roar, but in its patience, precision, and ability to thrive where few can survive. Even isolation doesn't weaken it. It sharpens its senses. Like you, it was made for altitude, not attention. What creature could better embody a rise that few can trace, yet none can deny once revealed? The Bible reminds us in Isaiah 40:31, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Your silent season is a renewal, a preparation for soaring heights that others can only watch in awe. So yes, they thought they buried you, but really you were just deepening your roots, preparing to grow taller, stronger, and more unstoppable than ever before. And now when you rise, they can only watch, stunned, as the seed they tried to kill blooms into something they never saw coming. The apology ain't coming, but the consequences already did. You don't have to hold your breath waiting for an apology. It's never coming, and that's not your burden to carry. What they owe you isn't a sorry wrapped in empty words. It's the consequences of their own choices playing out in real time. When you're a chosen one, underestimating you isn't just a mistake. It's a spiritual miscalculation that triggers a domino effect they can't control. Have you noticed how those who underestimate others often fall victim to their own blindness? Why do we sometimes fail to see that pride blinds before the fall? They thought they could break you, silence you, or hold you back without paying a price. But every action has a reaction, and spiritual law doesn't negotiate with pride or deceit. What they cast out with cruelty, gossip, and doubt has returned, but not in the way they expected. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. Isaiah 43:2. This reminds us that divine justice walks with us even when human justice fails. Instead of you falling, they're the ones watching their own foundations crumble. The businesses they tried to sabotage falter. The relationships they poisoned turn toxic. The reputations they smeared collapse under the weight of their own dishonesty. It's not about revenge or bitterness, it's about balance. The universe isn't interested in petty payback, it's restoring order. Can you feel the subtle shifts in the energy around those who once thrived on manipulation? How long before their own actions undo them? And when you stand firm in your truth, what you built with integrity flourishes, while what they built on manipulation rots from the inside out. They don't see it coming because they were too busy trying to bury you, ignoring that what you plant with purpose grows beyond their reach. Think of Malcolm X, the civil rights activist and powerful orator who faced immense opposition and was often vilified by those threatened by his message. Yet, his legacy grew stronger after his death, as the principles he stood for took root in the hearts of millions. How does his story reflect the truth that consequences often outlast the noise of opposition? Or consider Clara, a local community organizer and single mother who faced slander and false accusations by local rivals, trying to halt her progress. They never apologized, but as their credibility diminished, Clara's projects thrived, uplifting countless families in her neighborhood. What silent victories have you witnessed in your own life or community? Even everyday heroes like Elias, a small business owner in a struggling town, endured betrayals and harsh rumors. Instead of breaking, he used the setbacks as fertilizer for growth, expanding his shop and creating jobs for neighbors. Have you ever witnessed quiet strength turning hardship into opportunity? Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. This verse echoes the unyielding truth of spiritual balance. No injustice escapes correction. Even nature teaches this lesson, like the sea turtle, which travels thousands of miles through dangerous waters, guided by an innate force to return home safely, persisting despite peril. What natural forces can you relate to your own journey of resilience? Consider also the cactus thriving in barren deserts, conserving water and growing strong where others wither. Or the hummingbird, seemingly delicate yet fiercely persistent, darting tirelessly from flower to flower, symbolizing endurance and joy amid hardship. So let them stew in their silence, scramble for excuses, or try to rewrite history. The real message is clear and unstoppable. You were never the problem. The consequences they face now are the natural result of underestimating a force they couldn't control. The apology is not coming. The consequences are already here, and they're louder than any words ever could be. You turned their rejection into a stage, and now they can't even get a ticket. The door they slammed in your face wasn't your ending, it was your opening act. But do they realize that now? While they whispered behind closed doors, thinking they'd silenced you for good, you were backstage rehearsing, refining, building something they never saw coming. They thought they were shutting you out. What they didn't know was that they were unknowingly handing you the blueprint to a platform they could never stand on. What they meant to be a dead end became your stage. And now hundreds, no thousands, who've lived your story, felt your pain, or witnessed your silent grind, are watching you rise with awe. Why? Because your comeback isn't just personal, it's prophetic. You didn't just survive their cold shoulders and slammed doors. You transmuted rejection into revelation. Like how a butterfly emerges from the isolation of the cocoon, you emerged marked, transformed, and untouchable. Every no they gave you became a brick in the foundation of your influence. They tried to keep you out, but now you're the one writing the guest list. Ngai ka Moses, ngoi jan chai tron lu vong, sau ki joy mat voi sutu choi, chung jok chon jelan jau mot kwakia, bat kiatin vau toi, nukin tant janoi, nung dong not song se chai tu ben trong ho. John bay batam tam, Jeo nai kong fan an suk man tieman troi day tun hung noi kong no toi sao. Look at Tyler Perry, an actor, playwright, and filmmaker. He was once homeless, living in his car, laughed at by industry insiders who told him he had no place in their world. But he didn't wait for their approval. He built his own studio, his own platform, his own legacy. And now, the very people who rejected him pay top dollar to step foot on the ground he owns. But this isn't just about celebrities. Meet Rosa, a single mother of 3 who applied to over 20 art galleries in her city, each one turning her away, saying her work wasn't marketable enough. So she started painting murals in her neighborhood for free. Slowly, people began to notice. A cafe owner asked for one. Then a local magazine featured her. Now her community raises funds just to have her paint their walls. The very city that dismissed her now can't get enough of her expression. They tried to lock her out, and now her work is everywhere they turn. What's more poetic than that? Even nature agrees. The lotus, one of the most beautiful flowers in the world, doesn't grow in pristine conditions. It blossoms in the filth of swamps and murky waters. The environment that was meant to bury its beauty ends up amplifying it. Just like you. They thought locking you out would keep you small. Instead, it forced you to dig deeper, to rise higher, to shine brighter in places they can't reach. Now you're not just celebrated, you're leading a movement. The tables didn't just turn, they disappeared. You built a new room, with new lights, new doors, and a different kind of currency. Authenticity, resilience, and divine timing. And the irony? They're standing outside, trying to peek in, searching for a way to gain entry. But you already changed the locks. You created a space where they no longer belong. a space where your tribe, your supporters, and your legacy thrive without them. Does it ever hit them that they didn't just miss the moment, they missed the miracle? Rejection didn't just fuel your fire, it built your kingdom, and now the very ones who doubted you, they're the ones on the outside looking in, realizing too late that they were the ones who lost the real seat at the table. Because when God builds the stage, no man can block your spotlight. This ain't just your vindication, it's their exposure. This moment goes far beyond just proving yourself right. It's a full-on unveiling of everything those fake friends, jealous rivals, and secret manipulators tried to hide. They built their little castles of lies thinking no one would see through the cracks. But now the whole city's watching, and those cracks have turned into gaping holes. The very people who whispered behind your back, twisted your story, and disrespected you are now scrambling, trying desperately to rewrite what everyone already knows. It's almost funny how they act like they're the heroes of the story when they were the ones tearing you down behind closed doors. Their fake smiles, their empty apologies, their sudden support, none of it can erase what's been done or the truth that's out in the open. But let me ask you this, was it ever about proving them wrong? Or was it about standing in the light of your God-given truth while everything built on shadows crumbled? Can lies outlast the patience of heaven? How long can a mask stay on when the fire of truth begins to rise? The narrative isn't theirs to control anymore, because this isn't just about opinions or rumors. It's been documented in real time. God's got the ultimate record, and it's not some private file. It's a public archive, witnessed by everyone who is paying attention. Every insult, every betrayal, every underhanded move has been logged and remembered. And now the truth is shining so bright, it's impossible to hide. Your vindication isn't just about you rising above. It's about exposing the whole system of deceit that tried to hold you down. It's a divine revelation that what they tried to bury has become their undoing. If God allowed you to be buried, was it to die, or was it so your roots could dig deeper than their reach? What if every lie they told was only permission for heaven to expose what had been hidden too long? They thought they could control the story, but instead they became the story, the cautionary tale of what happens when you underestimate the chosen and try to rewrite history. So while they scramble to fix their image, just know the real victory is in the truth that can never be erased, the reputation they can never fully reclaim, and the legacy you're building on a foundation they tried and failed to destroy. Your journey wasn't just about proving people wrong. It was about redefining the entire game they thought they controlled. Every sneer, every closed door, every whispered doubt wasn't the end of your story. It was the spark that ignited a powerful transformation. Could it be that the silence of God was never his absence, but his preparation for your public unveiling? Who really lost something? Those who walked away, or the one who kept walking with purpose? You didn't just rise from their rejection. You built an empire from it. You exposed the cracks in their foundation, forcing the whole city to reevaluate who holds real power and influence. Like singer Susan Boyle, who was mocked and underestimated after her first public performance, yet she quietly nurtured her talent and faith. Years later, her voice touched millions worldwide, proving that initial rejection is not the end, but often the beginning of a powerful comeback that only patience and belief can create. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. They thought burying you would silence your truth. But what they didn't realize is that your silence was strategic, a deepening of your roots, preparing you to come back stronger, wiser, and more unstoppable than ever. Just like the coral reef, which grows imperceptibly over decades beneath the ocean's surface, building vibrant and life-giving structures through tiny, patient efforts. Though its progress is slow and unseen by most, it eventually creates a magnificent ecosystem that stands strong against the tides. This quiet, persistent growth was never wasted. It was a divine masterpiece in the making. How many laughed at the dirt on your name, not realizing you were being planted, not buried? When roots grow in silence, can critics even hear what's coming? While they scrambled to write their narratives and toss out fake apologies, the consequences of their actions were already unfolding. Their efforts to tear you down only illuminated their own flaws and insecurities for all to see. Now the very voices that once tried to erase you are the ones quoting you in rooms you weren't allowed into. They are forced to reckon with the reality that you were never the problem. They were simply afraid of the light you carried. And isn't that often the case? People don't fear your mistakes, they fear your purpose. If your presence made them insecure, was that ever your problem or their revelation? Let me take you to a small bakery in a town no one talks about. A woman named Lucia. She was mocked by her old boss for dreaming too big, shamed by friends for quitting her stable job. But she kept kneading dough at night, praying through tears, feeding single mothers who couldn't pay. Years later, her name became known throughout the region, not for fame, but for impact. Her bakery became a refuge, her story a testimony. And those who laughed at her? They now wait in line for bread she blesses. Your value is never determined by their vision. Your rise isn't just a personal victory. It's a collective awakening for everyone who's been sidelined, underestimated, or dismissed. This moment is not just your vindication, it's their exposure, a divine unveiling of falsehoods, betrayal, and manipulation that can no longer hide in the shadows. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6:7. The truth you embody has been archived by something greater than any of us, witnessed by a city that now stands with you. So, as you move forward, know this. The story you're writing isn't just about overcoming adversity. It's about breaking cycles, shifting power, and inspiring a whole community to rise with you. You turned their rejection into your stage, their doubt into your audience, their silence into a roar that can't be ignored. The tables didn't just turn. You rebuilt the entire room, and they're not even on the guest list. This is more than a comeback. This prophecy is fulfilled. This isn't just a message, it's a movement, a divine disruption, a spiritual uprising. Because when a chosen one rises, the atmosphere shifts, the silence breaks, the chains fall, and those who once laughed start listening. Those who once overlooked start observing. The world doesn't just notice, it adjusts. It's not just a comeback, it's a revolution. And everyone watching knows one undeniable truth. When God's chosen ones walk in their anointing, nothing stays the same. If this word resonates with something deep inside you, if it stirred your spirit, reminded you of who you are, or reignited a fire that had almost gone out, don't let it stop here. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to walk in boldness, in truth, and in transformation. Drop a like if you felt the weight of this word. Comment below with what hit you the hardest. This space is a sanctuary for real ones like you. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their rejection isn't the end. It's the beginning of something holy. We're not just building a channel, we're birthing a remnant, a tribe of warriors, of truth-tellers, of purpose walkers. And I want you with me for every step of it. Whether you gave through super thanks or simply took the time to watch, reflect, and receive, I see you, I honor you, and I thank you. Your presence here is part of the mission, and your spirit adds to the power of this movement. May God bless you richly, beyond your expectations, beyond your prayers, and especially beyond what others thought possible for you. May your steps be guided, your voice be heard, your spirit be protected, and your journey be divine. And remember, you're not just watching a revolution, you are the revolution. We're just getting started. Stay locked in, And until next time, walk boldly, speak the truth, and carry the fire. God bless you.